The trad position is to be pro-abortion. And I mean that entirely seriously. That is the traditionalist mode. The traditionalist mode is that if your daughter gets knocked up by some cad, that you remove her from the situation and discreetly get an abortion so that she won't be shamed and your family won't become notorious for her being a single mother. That's the trad position. It's not even trad like medieval or something. That's like the modern trad position on abortion. Period. It's not a surprise that Bush family was involved with Planned Parenthood. If you say trad in a much deeper sense, then it's clearly the trad position to be pro-abortion, being that abortions have taken place since ancient Egypt. I believe there actually was some sort of concoction, a recipe for concoction to bring on a miscarriage from, like pre-Bronze Age collapse Egypt or something like this. Maybe it was later Egypt. Who knows? All
I
I'm
think I've
saying is that it's old and
yeah, I think I've heard
exposure
of it.
was a well-known ethic in the Greek world. A little bit different than abortion, but it was basically like a mother dog kicking out the runt and allowing it to die. So that's abortion and exposure. Those are the trad positions. Those are the right wing positions. Anti-abortion crusade is and being anti-abortion is a left wing position. Period. And as you say, like the only right wing thing that I can think of it is that they imagine that every abortion that takes place is some like vile bitch who wants to get an abortion because it interferes with her vacation plans, excuse me, or because she won't get a promotion or something. Like that's their image of the women who get abortions. And to be fair, you could probably find cases like that. You could find some bitch on, Instagram that's like, oh, I just got an abortion. I'm so proud. Like, oh, I got a new job too. I'm sure you can find an example of this proverbial like feminist who's pro-abortion. But that's a very small fraction of people who get abortions. And it's a very complicated issue. Many abortions are done. Now, they say the rape or incest exceptions, those are what he mentions, or health of the mother. Those do happen. There's no question those happen. Many cases, there are issues of birth defects. There are just very difficult situations where most of the women who get abortions have children. So it's a very complicated issue. And then there, of course, is the issue of, I guess you could say that the intersection of class and race, where these people, I mean, blacks are radically overrepresented in getting abortions. And these women, they're out of control. They're drunk. They have no earthly idea who the father is. It could be a lineup of 20 or so men who she's had sex with without any sort of protection or foresight or anything like that. And they basically use abortion as a form of birth control. Whereas reasonable people, although of course, obviously mistakes can happen and so on, will, at least use the old withdrawal method or use a condom or she'll go on the pill, etc. That shows some sort of self-control and forward planning. But the boys in the hood, they can't even bring themselves to pull out. Sorry to be so vulgar about it, but this is the reality of the situation. They can't even bring themselves to pull out. They need that one last push to make it count. And they know that Shalankwa will go to Planned Parenthood in a few months to basically take a condom, a time machine condom, I guess is maybe how we, a prophylactic, but after the fact. um, and that's just what it is. That's the reality of abortion. And these stories, granted, they're anecdotes, but the story of a woman in Texas who she planned to get pregnant with her husband. And she was in a very terrible situation with the child she was having all sorts of complications. And doctors feared going to jail by inducing the pregnancy, giving her abortion. And so they just refused to do it. I mean, understandably, I mean, you're a doctor, you're not signing up to be thrown in jail for a decade or whatever, or go through some these lawsuit thing they had before Roe v. Wade was overturned, where you could like sue the doctor for a woman an abortion or anyone who assists in the abortion. They don't want to go through, spend 100 grand and up on some civil lawsuit by various pro-life groups. I mean, goodness gracious. So they refused, and now this woman survived, but she can't have children anymore. So she is not some feminist bitch who wants to get an abortion because it's, baby's inconvenient for her lifestyle. Those women exist, but they're 2% of the people getting abortion. She was trying to have a family, and she ran into a lot of stumbling blocks. Sad case. But it's really the pro-life movement that is radically left-wing. And as I mentioned before, the Bible is basically silent on the abortion question, at least addressing it specifically. There's something, I'll have to go find this. There's something in the Torah about like, if you get in a fight with a pregnant woman's brother and the shock of the fight induces a miscarriage, you have to pay a fine. It's just some weird, convoluted issue. And so what the pro-life movement came is, I'm sure to some degree, just to be fair to them, I think some of these pro-lifers have trad values, and they imagine that feminist bitch who gets an abortion, if you can prevent her from getting an abortion, then she'll almost be like forced into compulsory traditionalism, and she'll become a mom and put away her Jezebel ways or whatever they think. But that's about all they've got, because the entire pro-life movement rests on a concept of human rights, and B, a concept of human equality. In other words, they're leftist. I would also add that, I mean, I can, like, scientifically speaking, is a fetus a life form that is going to become the child? Of course, that is true. There is a life form in the mother's womb. We celebrate birthdays. We don't celebrate conception days. Now, that has a lot to do with the fact that conception can be dubious, I guess, and so you don't know exactly when it happened. But traditionally, the birth is this marker of something new. You're not totally reliant on your mother for basic sustenance. Now we all know you are up until, I don't know, you're age 12 or something, but you understand the point. You celebrate a birthday, you enter the world. There's something new that has happened at that point. Viability, by the way, probably goes back to, I think it was Aquinas.
There was
Go
a
ahead.
common law tradition of what's it called? You're
The
not a
quickening.
person till first breath. So
Oh, first breath. Right. That's
yes,
actually a
the
good
doctrine
point.
of first breath. Yes. No emergence from the no emergence at birth, no legal personhood.
Right. Now, remember, Plato in the Republic is a bit of a eugenicist. We talked about this summer. Aristotle's a much less kind of mystical writer. He affirmed the ethic of exposure. So the two most important philosophers in the tradition are pro-abortion, by the way. I think it was
It
Aquinas.
it was Aquinas.
It was
Yes.
Aquinas. Okay.
Yeah, he
Uh,
did talk about the quickening, as you say.
the
Yeah.
quickening. So the quickening literally means like the first kick or something. And I think this medieval tradition has been passed down to us in the notion of viability. So a sort of notion that if there were a premature pregnancy, that this child could survive, or I guess that's what viability means. But to be honest, it's just a sort of arbitrary designation. But so even medieval Catholics thought that you could have that medieval Catholics supported Roe v. Wade, is what I'm saying, for all intents and purposes. So there's nothing trad about the pro-life movement, and it is based on a human rights dogma that everyone has a right to life, and you're endowed with rights. And then they also turn the in our image we created them, man and woman, in our image we created them. It's in our image, by the way, because it's Elohim in Genesis. But anyway, I won't even go into that. But in God's image is usually how the evangelicals put it, because they don't want to address that fact that Elohim is the plural form of gods. But anyway, like they go back to some like some human rights dogma, in effect, that God made you perfect and therefore you have inherent rights through that. I mean, keep in mind that God also ordered the flooding of the world because men had bade him. He ordered a genocide of the Canaanites because they were also depraved and squatting on the promised land and all this sort of thing. So the notion that Yahweh gives two shits about the right to life is a rather dubious notion to begin with.